Does the future of cruising include older cruise ships? Well, probably not all of them. An acceleration of sending cruise ships to the scrapyard. A conversation in today's episode of the Lido Loca Cruise Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Tony. If you enjoy that cruise and travel content, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. Well, just a few days ago, there was an interview between the Points Guy, a travel blogger, and CEO of Carnival Corporation, Arnold Donald. That interview chock full of information about the future of cruising. I would highly recommend it. I will link it in the first comment. It's a article, but then there's also a video component. An interesting takeaway from that article is Carnival Corporation's approach to retiring cruise ships. Many have speculated that one way to adjust for cost and for cash issues is to reduce the amount of cruise ships in the inventory of these corporations. And this is something that happens kind of routinely in the cruise industry. As cruise ships outlive their usefulness, they're often sold off to secondary markets, smaller cruise companies. The Bahamas Paradise, a great example of this. Their two-ship fleet includes a retired ship from Carnival and a retired ship from Costa. And so it's not unheard of for cruise lines to take their cruise ships and sell them off to other cruise lines. What was interesting in the interview with the Points Guy, Mr. Donald talked about the retirement of cruise ships, and he didn't really speak about selling off old cruise ships. He talked about sending some cruise ships directly to the scrapyard. Here's what he said. There will be an acceleration of retirement of ships. There's no question about that. I'd go so far as to say it's highly probable that you are going to see some ships actually scrapped, opposed to just moving to secondary or tertiary markets. That's interesting but logical. If Carnival is getting rid of cruise ships to put themselves in a better financial position, it only makes sense that smaller cruise lines that would normally buy up these cruise ships, they're probably not in any better financial position considering the state of cruising today. And so, yes, we will be seeing Carnival cruise ships leaving the fleet. Now, these are Carnival Corporation cruise ships. That doesn't mean that your favorite Carnival Fantasy Class ship will be going away. The Points Guy even asked him about that, and it seems like Mr. Donald has an affinity for the Fantasy Class, pointing out that Carnival Fantasy Class ships are actually very popular. They actually continue to make money and be booked well for Carnival. One thing you have to remember about Carnival Cruises, not the Carnival Corporation, but Carnival Cruises themselves, they do a good job of having embarkation ports in smaller markets. Tampa, for example, Mobile, Alabama. They need those smaller cruise ships, especially places like Tampa that have a bridge that they have to get under. Over in Jacksonville, they have a bridge that they have to get under. So these smaller cruise ships tend to fit the bill well for those smaller embarkation ports. Mr. Donald pointing out the popularity of the Fantasy Class ships. So I'm uncertain whether or not you're going to see Fantasy Class ships leave. And interestingly, as I was getting ready to record this video, I did do a search. CruiseRadio.net just releasing an article reporting that earnings findings say that exactly what Mr. Donald said is getting ready to happen, an acceleration of the retirement of cruise ships, possibly 6 cruise ships going to be retired in 2020. The names of those ships and from which of the Carnival lines they come from, not yet known. But yeah, certainly things moving rapidly when it comes to the retirement of cruise ships. It's important to note that these 6 ships were already designated for some sort of retirement, moving out of the fleet. Again, this is kind of normal practice in the cruise industry. New ships come on, new ships go off, but certainly in this challenging time, it makes sense that ships would go off before a lot of new ships come on. And there are still brand new ships in the pipeline. A lot of it delayed because of the current crisis. Ships will come out later than what they were planned. So at some point, those 6 ships that move out of the fleet, don't be surprised if the fleet grows by 6 ships. I don't think that's happening anytime soon, but as cruising resumes over the next year, next 2 years, and demand peaks again, which is the driver for these building of new ships, you will see the fleet inventory possibly increase. Let's close the video out with a fun exercise. Think about all the cruise ships that you've been on. Let's say that you have to scrap one of them, whether they're old or not. Pick one of your cruise ships that you've been on and scrap them. It's a tough call for me. I have been on 3 fantasy class ships, which are older ships. I've been on the Carnival Fantasy, the Carnival Elation, the Carnival Paradise. I believe I would pick one of those 3 to scrap. I'm going to scrap the Paradise. I had such a great time on the Paradise going to Cuba, but I just could not scrap the Fantasy because that was my first cruise ship. I could not scrap the Elation. That was our first group cruise. And so, yes, I would have to say goodbye to the Paradise. Which one of your cruise ships would you scrap? Leave a comment below. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please show your support for the channel by hitting the like button. Check out one of these other Lido Loca videos. My name is Tony, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido.